Governor Romney's Mormonism is the first Mormon to presumptively have the nomination of a major party for president, is a large and growing religion in the United States and worldwide, but I think most people have only a pretty limited sense of what Mormonism is all about. It's a young religion, world historically. It's an American original. It's also a religion that has come under particular criticism from some other conservative Christian groups that theologically see Mormonism not as proper Christianity. And there have been some, not often openly discussed, but I think some undercurrents of mistrust of Romney among elements of what would normally be and what are the Republican base, religious conservatives, evangelical Christians, who, at least in the abstract, have a problem with Mormonism. So it's not being talked about a whole lot, but it's definitely bubbling under in discussions about this election. In a very weird sort of metacultural way, I think the debate about Mormonism now is likely to reflect the modes of our culture. We're talking about things happening more recently, more rapidly, moving targets. And in 1960, perhaps things were a little bit more staid. People had a little bit more of a sense of history and could sort of have a debate, however, elevated or rank the debate was, in those terms. Now, the debate about Mormonism fits the age of mass communication and rapid communication. We're talking about recent history. We're talking about rapid change. In general, I think it is presumptively appropriate to consider a candidate's religion as part of that candidate's persona, as something that's important about who that candidate is. However, caveat number one, I think generally the candidate should get a lot of leeway in terms of setting the terms of that debate. So if Kennedy says, look, my Catholicism isn't going to make any difference to what I do as president, I think the presumptive thing you do is take him at his word. He's making a strong statement. Okay, he's got a religious belief. Most people have everybody's got religious beliefs or non-beliefs. So you make a statement about what that means to you, and I think we move forward from there and don't pay too much attention to the religious background. Romney is different in the sense that certainly he's not out there, saying, I'm going to be a Mormon president, I'm going to make Mormon policies, and that's really important. But he is a guy who has had an official role within the Mormon church. And in that respect, I think that is a part of the record in the same way that his handling of the Olympics, his work at Bain Capital, his governorship of Massachusetts, it's a somewhat different, the religious activity takes on a somewhat different cast and profile because of his particular life history. And so I think in a different way, that makes it fair game. But I still think that if Romney says, look, here's how I view my religion in the context of my public decisions and my public life, I think we should give him a lot of credence on that. Religion in the United States, in most places, but certainly in the United States, is a part of politics. A lot of religious believers and non-believers filter their political views and political discourse and who they're going to vote for through their religious beliefs. And that is merely a fact that we cannot and should not ignore. On another level, I think you can fairly, and a lot of people have talked about this, what should be the role of explicitly religious statements in public discourse? And, we're never going to settle that question. I think that religious statements, religious arguments have a proper role to play in public discourse. But I think the corollary to that is that it's fair to criticize those statements. So this recent controversy on the Obama administration's contraception policies, the Catholic bishops have made very clear that they are leading the charge against this policy. They have a public policy position based on a theological teaching. I think that's appropriate. I think it is equally appropriate for others who may have a different view to come back and say, look, we've looked at your theology on this, assuming they have looked at it with care, and we find the theology objectionable. I think that's a fair basis on which to come back in opposition to the argument the bishops are making. It's not the only one. And again, I think you need to be careful to avoid stereotyping and caricature and mere religious bigotry. But if the Catholic Church is saying contraception is immoral and here's why, and that should guide public policy, at least to a certain extent, the moral teaching is an appropriate basis for argument both ways.